The 2025 NFL draft is already come and gone, which that puts everyone right now in a little stage of pondering, right? Where we look back at the ultimate draft hauls our teams got, try to figure out how we feel about those picks and those players, and mainly decide what we think these players are going to do for our teams in the 2025 NFL season. What's good, everybody? You already know it's the real AG here. And to kind of put a little bow on our draft coverage here at the Lockdown Defense Sports Network, I'm going to be bringing you my overview of the Chiefs 2025 draft haul and, discuss what I think they did right, grade their picks and just the traits that these players bring to the Chiefs in the 2025 season. And look, okay, I get it. I'm repping the Chiefs all day, every day. And I'm not just saying this because of my fandom, but Kansas City, in my opinion, had one of the better drafts this past weekend. And I think when you go look at kind of just national media coverage of draft reviews, a lot of people seem to be agreeing with me. So, what more could I say there? But you look at what they did, right? They hit all major areas of need early in the draft, which I love to see. Did not waste early draft capital on a position or player that wouldn't necessarily come in and contribute now. And then you look at what they did in the later rounds, later days of the draft. They added a lot of quality depth, a lot of exciting, raw, athletic rookies that, they can ultimately develop, and I think everyone helps bolster this already championship roster. So without much further stroking of the Chiefs ego here on their draft, let's just look at the picks they made and my analysis of them and what I think these guys can bring to the Chiefs in the 2025 season. So just looking at the draft as a whole, Chiefs did make some moves, made moves in round one, moved up in round three, and traded up in round seven and got rid of a plethora of seventh round picks. But as a whole, I gave the Chiefs grade as an A minus. Like I said, they hit every major area of need early, added a lot of exciting prospects in later rounds, and I think didn't really make any sort of boneheaded move or just added somewhere where they didn't need to. So A minus across the board. Just looking at the picks as a whole, we had Josh Simmons in the first round, Omar Norman Lott in the second round, 2 third-round picks in Ashton Gillette and Noel Williams, fourth-round pick Jalen Royals, fifth-round pick Jeffrey Bassa, and seventh-round pick Brashard Smith. So let's just kind of piece by piece through that, shouldn't we here? So looking at round one, the most important draft pick for the Chiefs in 2025. A lot of talk going into the draft of, everyone knew they needed a left tackle. I knew it, you knew it. Everyone knew it. That was even made more apparent in the Super Bowl. You saw them address left tackle a bit, bringing in Jalen Moore, and people wondered if they'd be able to double dip or have to move up to get a tackle. And the way the board fell, it worked out perfectly for Kansas City. I should add, they did actually trade back to pick 32, picking where they normally do, baby. Ultimately trading with Philadelphia to let them move up one spot after they figured out they were going defense and knowing they were targeting offense all along. I thought it was a great pick because Kansas City, got the 164th selection to move back one spot. So again, added, a day 3 pick to really pick the same guy they were planning to anyways. So love that. Look at who they picked. They took Josh Simmons, the tackle out of Ohio State. He has great measurables, 6'5", 317, 33-inch arm lengths, which is right in what Andy Reid likes to target with his tackles. I gave this grade an A minus because he does come in with a little bit of injury concerns. Obviously, had the torn patella that took him out of the latter half of the 2024 season. But if Simmons returns to pre-injury form, I mean, I think the Chiefs arguably drafted the best left tackle, offensive tackle in the draft. I mean, Ryan Day himself is obviously going to pump up his own player, but I mean, he has said many times that if Simmons came back and played one more year healthy, he'd have been a top 5 pick. So, just take that for what it's worth coming from his college coach. Again, does have the injury concerns, but you want to trust that Brett Veach and the front office did their homework, um, and potentially obtained, the long-term answer to protecting Mahomes' blind side, which is something that they've been desperately trying to do for the last 3-4 years with sort of this patch gapping, hole, fill in the holes, if you will, at left tackle through very old aging vets. And now they, bring in competition for Jalen Moore and potentially got their guy of the future if he returns to pre-injury form. But just some of the stuff I like about what he put on tape before the injury. I mean, he's very smooth out of his stance and operating, in space. Very rapid fire, foot quickness. He has perfect timing to land the first punch, which is definitely what you want in pass protection. You know, shows a good feel for pocket and depth and just awareness of the pocket presence there. And I think ultimately is athletic enough and has a good range to provide some good impact in the screen game, which is something we all know Andy Reid loves. So again, love the pick and addressing the biggest need with Josh Simmons at pick 32. Moving on to the second round here, we saw Kansas City take defensive tackle Omar Norman Lott out of Tennessee. Um, you know, as I kind of said all offseason, Kansas City desperately needed to replenish the middle of their D line. They really just needed to bolster the D line as a whole. And that became even more apparent after losing both Deshaun Wharton and Derek Nandi in free agency. Now, with that being said, I think Norman Lott is definitely the most polarizing pick that Brett Veach made. One, he is a bit undersized. He's 6'2", 291. Um, you know, Two, not everyone was consensusly very high on him in the draft. And three, he was arguably a bit of a reach at 63. But as we saw after the Chiefs took him, there was a massive run on defensive tackles, kind of into the second round, early third. So I'm not totally mad about them picking the guy that they wanted. Again, like with Simmons, you got to trust that they know what they're doing. But I view Norman Lott as a direct replacement to the pass rush production they are losing from Wharton going to Carolina. I mean, you look at his pre-draft reviews, even PFF called Norman Lott arguably the best true pass rushing D tackle in the whole draft class. So, you're looking at a very energetic pass rusher that brings, high pressure rates, but is not going to wow you with any sort of power moves. But considering who they lost in free agency, the fact that they have an aging Chris Jones and that Norman Lott's going to get to learn from Chris Jones, I love this pick to retool the D line and get you a solidified or insured pass rushing packaged interior D lineman and hope that he can mold his game a little bit more after Chris Jones with a year or two under his belt of kind of seeing how he operates. But I gave the pick a B just because of some of the concerns, but for what they lost and needed to replenish, I do like the pick for Kansas City. So moving on to third round, we saw Chiefs again, load up on defense and address the defensive line, picking Ashton Gillette at pick 66 out of Louisville. This dude is just a stacked unit. I mean, you can kind of see in the picture there, he is thick with two C's, coming in at 6'3", 264 pounds. Several things that I love about Ashton here. I mean, big time production in college. He had 39 and a half TFLs and 25 and a half sacks in 50 career games at Louisville. Um, he has experience playing all over the D line, even at three tech. So again, you're kind of getting that utility piece that you can use situationally, even on the inside of the D line. He's, has already good experience and exposure, if you will, to George Karloftis. The two of them have already met through having the same defensive line coach in college, and Karloftis actually last year helped train Ashton and review film with him and give him tips. So love that he already has a little bit of camaraderie with the unit he's going into. And then on top of that, dude's uncle is a diehard Chiefs fan, as evidenced by his post-draft interviews, already decked out in a lot of pretty sick looking Chiefs gear. So love that that worked out for his family and love to welcome him to the Chiefs family. But, looking at what he brings, he's not an overly complicated pass rusher. But, he, like I said, is stacked, is a unit, is going to collapse the pocket with power, beat up an edge with violent hands and is quick enough to sneak past guards if he's on the inside. So again, with KC needing to retool the D line, um, I love the pick. Gave it a B plus. I didn't want to give it an A because I didn't want to seem too biased, but at the same time, he is a little bit of a one-trick power pony here. But Chiefs needed to boost. They needed to boost the edge rush presence. Like you're looking at last year, Karloftis led the team with 8 sacks, but he was really the only productive guy. The returning trio they have of Mike Dana, Felix and DK Uzoma, and Amenahue, those guys only had 7 sacks combined. So definitely needed to bolster that. I love the guy they took, and excited to see how he fits into the fold, week 1 of 2025. Looking at the next pick, the Kansas City Chiefs, I actually traded with New England to move up and get this pick. They moved up 10 spots, ultimately gave up a 2026 fourth round pick. But, considering it's not a really deep QB class, not QB, cornerback class, I love what Veach did, and it made sense for him to go and get his guy. And his guy at pick 85 was Noah Williams, the cornerback out of California. He, 6 foot, 199, 4.5 40. But, there's a lot to like about Williams' game and how it would fit in with a Spags defense. And exciting to add him to a group that includes McDuffie, Jalen Watson, and Fulton, who they signed in free agency. But look at it like just what he did last year. He led FBS with 7 interceptions. That's right, 7 interceptions. And started all 13 games and tallied 52 tackles. So again, Kansas City needed to add some more depth on the defensive side of the ball and in the secondary. And like I said, Williams fits the bill for what Spags kind of demands out of his corners. Operates out of press man, excels at trailing routes and finding the football, as evidenced by the 7 picks there. And, the 4.5 40 is not overly ideal, but, he has shown he has the burst ability to kind of make up the distance if he does get a little toasted. So, I love this pick. I love that they added a ball hawking type corner. And, I think he's going to immediately come in and serve as the 3rd or 4th corner, depending on if he beats out Watson. And he's going to see meaningful reps pretty early on. So gave that one a B plus, but like I said, love the pick and love that they just hit the areas of need early and often in the NFL draft here. So moving on to pick 4, or their 4th round pick. They took Jalen Royals, the wide receiver out of Utah State at 133. It was ironic to see Veach kind of waiting a long time to address the offense, but what he finally did was a tremendous best value pick and a guy that I think could come in and contribute now. Like you look at what he brings in terms of measurables: 6 foot, 205 pounds, 4.42 40. He's a quick physical presence in the pass catching game that could play inside and outside, and I think will impact special teams potentially as a return man. He did have an injury in 2024, which limited him to just 7 games. But in those 7 games, he had 55 catches, 834 yards, and 6 touchdowns. But looking at the year before that, he had 1,000 yards, 71 catches, 15.2 yards per catch, and had a Utah State record of 15 receiving touchdowns. So, you know, love that they added to the wide receiver room, especially after missing out on Sky Moore and kind of getting that added insurance with some potential injury, suspension concerns around some other guys. And it's just cool to have a guy with the last name Royals catching passes from Mahomes while in Kansas City. So great pick in the 4th round and probably the best value that Beach got throughout the draft, which is why I gave it an A grade. So moving on to the 5th round pick, again, Kansas City traded to get this pick. They traded with Pittsburgh to move up and just gave up one of the 3 7th-rounders they had. So I thought that was a pretty good value move. And they ultimately took at pick 156, Jeffrey Bassa, the linebacker out of Oregon, who I should note is a former safety turned linebacker. But he comes in measurable wise, 6'1", 232, 4.6340. Looking at his stats last year, he played in 14 games, started 12, 54 tackles, 2.5 TFLs, a sack and a half, 2 pass breakups, and 2 forced fumbles. So, I don't expect Bassa to see much, outside of special teams in his rookie year, especially considering the returning trio of Bolton, Tranquil, and Leo Chanel. But again, you got a good insurance piece with Tranquil turning 30. You got an immediate bolstering to your coverage abilities in the second level of your defense with a safety turn linebacker, kind of athletic specimen. And by them signing Bolton, they can move Bassa to the will linebacker, which I think is going to just allow him to play more run and hit football and ultimately help him develop quicker and become a contributor quicker. So love the value, love the pick and just the raw athletic ability that Bassa could bring to Kansas City. To be determined what he does in 2025, but gave the pick itself a B grade. And then to round things out with what I think is potentially the most exciting pick of the NFL draft for Kansas City. Again, made some moves here. Kansas City traded with the Pats again, sent them pick 251 and 257 to move up and take Brashard Smith, the running back out of SMU, at 228. You can see my grade there. Gave it an A minus. Looking at his measurables, 5'10", 194 pounds, and a 4.3940. I just love this pick. Giving me serious Pacheco vibes. Not that he plays the same as Pacheco, but KC found a diamond in the rough in the 7th round, and I think Veach, fingers crossed, knock on wood, might have done it again with Smith here in the 7th round. He has all the dynamics and traits of becoming a dynamic running back. He transferred from Miami to SMU for 1 year and converted from wide receiver to running back. So he has that patch catching prowess that Andy Reid loves with his running backs. Only has 253 career carries through his college career, so still a lot of tread on the tire. And you look in 2024, he led SMU with rushing yards with 1,300, 14 rushing touchdowns, had almost 2,000 all-purpose yards, which included 39 catches, 327 receiving yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns. So, I think he's going to get instant and plenty amount of opportunities with the current state of the Chiefs running back room. And again, just helps bolster the lack of dynamic abilities that they currently have. Pacheco, huge power back, going to run hard, going to give you those hard fought yards, but they haven't had really that finesse guy since Jet McKinnon a few years ago. And I think Brashard Smith, instantly brings you that. It's going to be his spot to lose, and that having that type of role, and can contribute pretty well on special teams too, because that's what he was known for at Miami, being the kick return specialist. So again, gave this draft pick an A minus, and love the bolstering that they did in the running back room late in the draft. So, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up my breakdown of the Kansas City Chiefs 2025 draft haul. Basically, love the picks they made. I think they got contributors, big contributors early, and quality depth later in the draft. So, please be sure to comment down below for my Chiefs Kingdom fans out there if you agree or disagree with something, or if you're just an NFL fan and want to tell me I'm being a biased mofo for covering the Chiefs. But please comment, please like the video, and be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the rest of the bomb content that we be dropping week in and week out. As always, get at me or the rest of the gang on our socials there, across Twitter, X, and Instagram. You can get at me at The Real Givens. And of course, you can find our Lockdown Defense Sports Network content across all social media platforms. And we even got a Gmail if you feel like you want to hit and send some really aggressive emails about our takes. I don't know how you want to operate. That's on you. But either way, please be sure to get at us. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.